So we're going to be live in a second. I'm going to share. I'm going to leave it to everybody. I'm not going to share myself. I'm going to leave it to everybody else to share.
Okay.
Okay, because if I share, I'm going to have to open Facebook, and I'm worried about
Just go.
resources. Then,
I'll share. I'll hit everybody up.
okay, good. You hit everybody up. That should be fine. And so we're in Facebook and we're in YouTube right now. We have so far only one. But we have only one viewer. That's probably Dolores. I would almost bet. But
Wait in a half hour.
I've been
Poor
waiting
girl.
for us
Poor
to solve it.
Dolores.
We've been talking MMT the whole time. I learned so much in this
Okay,
past
so
half
let's
hour.
get on with minting the coin. You wanted to ask some questions with respect to minting the coin. We have Courtney Love, who will be joining us in about a half hour, but we do have a half hour.
Okay. Well, let me open your comments just so I have this. I'd like to go through. Oh well, first of all, I have an MMT exclusive for you, Joe.
Yeah.
Comments. You're not gonna believe this. I used my power washer for the first time just a couple hours ago. Thank you very much.
Your power washer?
My power washer, my water power washer, my gasoline power washer. I started it up. I cleaned a panel on my fence. I did it. I feel like a man. So, all right. Now on to
Jeff Epstein. I never
Thank you. Thank
like
you.
I like
all right. Let me open your notes. Okay. So the problem, to give people a little bit of the background, if you look at my article on the debt ceiling, there is a minor but significant problem, given the overall piece, saying that the coin can only, the value of the coin, or however you say it, can only be used for what I say in the article as spending already appropriated by Congress. And that is kind of correct, but it's misleading. And the reason that I believe it's misleading is because I thought that spending was always mirrored by bond sales. I understand now that it's more that I think spending is the Treasury has to, I don't know how to say it. The spending either has to be matched by taxes or bond sales. So if they happen to have whatever, let's say we're doing $1 trillion in spending, they have 800 million in there, then Treasury has to top it off by 200 million. So they can top it off with taxes, they can top it off with bond sales, or mint the coin. Correct? Those are three options that could happen. So
three options that could happen, yes. And those are the primary options that will produce anything significant in terms of having additional revenue in the account, except there's a fourth option. They could sell consols, which are perpetual bonds, which do not count against the debt limit. And the reason why they do not count, against it is because since they are perpetual bonds, the principal never has to be paid back.
Lisa, if that sounds from you, could you
Sorry.
turn off that sound, or just mute? Turn off the beeps. Sorry. Okay. So the point is, I believe that the breakthrough that I had with you a long time ago, which I think Lisa kind of had a similar kind of breakthrough, which a long time ago that I had the realization after the cameras turned off, which was basically that spending, they choose for spending to be accompanied by bond sales. So the national debt is essentially all government spending since the beginning of time that hasn't been taxed back yet. So they spend, they take some of it back. This is the national debt. So the bonds, the principal of the bonds in the economy is equal to government spending overall, I believe, right? The principal. So the national debt is equal to the total of government spending. But at the same time, government spending is accompanied by either taxation or bond sales or mint the coin or consoles. And the latter two are not debt. So
The latter two are not debt subject to the limit.
They're not accompanied by bond sales, so therefore don't add to the national debt, therefore don't violate the debt ceiling.
Right. They are debt, though, in an accounting sense.
In accounting sense, but we're not talking about accounting sense. We're just talking in the bond sale sense,
Right.
the national debt sense. They're not national debt. All money is in accounting debt. All money is in accounting debt. National debt is an accounting debt and a bond debt, and then personal debt is an accounting debt and actual debt. Actual
debt, because we got to pay it back.
Yeah, I mean, scary debt. I'll say scary debt. So
scary debt. That's good. I like
scary
that.
debt. So
new technical terminology has been added. MMT. Scary debt.
I thank Google Chrome. So new spending is the coin can only, the wrong way of saying it is that the coin can only be used to top off the Treasury's account, and can only be used to I kind of had the pieces here, but I don't know quite how to put them together. So
right. Okay, so the coin is used to trigger the Federal Reserve to put some more reserves into the public enterprise fund account, okay, of the mint. Then the Treasury sweeps the public enterprise fund account for the seigniorage. The seigniorage is the profits,
the difference between
the cost of the coin and the face value, okay, of the coin.
So it's like $3,500 to do a platinum coin or something like that, and so a trillion is almost a trillion.
Right, almost a trillion, or almost 100 trillion, or almost 500 trillion, because it's the same cost.
Okay.
Okay. So then that seigniorage is swept into the Treasury spending account. At that point, it can be used the same way that any other reserves in the Treasury spending account, okay, are used.
And it can be sent into the real economy.
Two ways. There are only two ways that the reserves can be used. They can be used to pay off debt, okay, and to pay interest on the debt. And the second way is they can be used to spend appropriations, because that's all the Treasury has the authority to do.
Pay off debt. Pay off debt. That means pay off debt means purchase bonds.
Pay off the debt subject to the limit, which means pay the principal and pay the interest due.
Purchase bonds, purchase matured bonds.
Yes.
Yeah, but they got to pay off the principal and pay off the interest due.
They have to get a bond that's matured and give that person what they're owed. Principal plus interest.
Principal plus interest, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So help me come up with what I said before, which is wrong, that a coin can be only used for funding that it was already appropriated by Congress. So what do I replace that with?
Okay, just simply replace it, which can only be used to spend the appropriations, okay, of Congress, and to repay the principal with interest. The principal with interest of debt instruments that are falling due in the period of the appropriations. Okay, in other words, appropriations are for a particular period.
So the coin can be used only to pay for appropriated spending by Congress or purchase of bonds, matured bonds, to pay off matured bonds, which is essentially just more appropriated by Congress. That was just appropriated long ago.
Well, that's not quite really technically true, because the point is that those appropriations were made by Congress and were spent by Treasury. So the appropriations are gone.
But they authorized, whatever the correct term, they authorized Treasury to do that long ago in a law.
Okay, there's the authorization and also the appropriation. The appropriation is the money bill. Okay, an appropriation, or a continuing resolution? Yes. Yes, Lisa.
I think let me just see. Stop me if I'm wrong, Jeff. But I think what Jeff is trying to nail down is the coin. If we've got 30 trillion in debt, right? And we mint $100 trillion coin, we can take the 30 to pay out any bonds that come due, right? Which is what the debt is. Why we issue those bonds is another thing, but that's what that debt is. And then, which is, there's four things going on here. Debt that comes due, to pay those bonds, you need to have the treasury flush to be able to pay that out, right? The debt that we have right now, the national debt, is bonds that have been issued. Or no, there's a couple pieces. No, okay. It's the spending that we have incurred that has not been appropriated for. Is that correct?
No.
Let me try again. Let me try again. Building off of what Lisa is saying.
Go ahead.
The coin can be used to pay for what Congress has appropriated, or pay for matured bonds. Those are the two options. It cannot be used for the president's whims.
Exactly.
So it does not go into the economy. It sits in the mint as authorizations for Treasury to do one of those two things.
No, it doesn't sit in the mint.
Somewhere.
It sits
in the
Treasury. Those reserves sit in the Treasury spending account. Let's take the case of the $100 trillion coin. $100 trillion in reserves has been added to the Treasury spending account. So let's say today there's $20 billion in the Treasury spending account. Okay, $100 trillion then, is added to that. Okay, now let's say we go through the next fiscal year. Let's say the government has appropriated for spending $7 trillion. So those $7 trillion will be spent on the appropriations of Congress. Okay? Then some additional amount will be spent to pay back the principal on the debt and the interest due. Let us say, for the sake of an example, that over the next year, that's going to be 14 trillion. That 14 trillion out of the 30 trillion is going to be paid back over the next year. You may ask, why so much? Because there's a lot of short-term debt. There's a lot of 3-month debt, 6-month debt, and 9-month debt, and 1-year debt. And in 1 year's time, all that stuff's going to be paid back. And that might amount to 14 trillion out of the 30 trillion in debt. If I had looked it up, I could give you an exact number.
So
keep going.
Number. Okay. So say that was equal to 14 trillion. So there's going to be 14 trillion spent out of the 100 trillion. There's going to be another 7 trillion that's spent on the appropriations. So over the next year, 21 trillion out of the $100 trillion is going to be spent. Okay, leaving $79 trillion still sitting in the public purse in the Treasury spending account.
And the national debt having gone down slightly for however many bonds were purchased back.
Not slightly, by $14 trillion or so. It will have gone
14 trillion.
It will have gone down almost by half in 1 year's time.
And they don't, how much do they, I don't know if this question makes sense, but do they sell bonds for reasons beyond this? Reasons beyond, spending?
They may want to sell bonds for reasons beyond this, okay? But then it has to be clear to everybody that they're not selling those bonds for revenue. they're selling those bonds because the private market is demanding the sale of new bonds. Once that 100 trillion gets into the Treasury spending account, there is no further reason to issue any debt instruments from the standpoint of needing to top up the Treasury spending account.
Okay. Wait a second. Let me hold on a second. You're saying that they don't do that ever. Sell bonds to top off the Treasury account.
No, what I'm saying is that the proceeds from the bonds have the effect of triggering the Federal Reserve to top up the Treasury spending account with the equivalent amount that are proceeds from the bond sales. But it's a matter of a technical accounting.
Yes.
In the settlement of the bond transactions, in the settlement of those particular transactions, the bond proceeds are destroyed by the Federal Reserve. Okay, because a liability of the federal government, in fact, the Federal Reserve liability, has been redeemed when the Federal Reserve receives the dollars back that it had first issued. Those dollars, the liabilities of the federal government, okay, are redeemed. In other words, the life cycle of the issuance of money and the death of money has then been fulfilled. So the Federal Reserve destroys the reserves and creates completely new ones in an equivalent amount to place in the Treasury spending account.
Okay. Jeff, are you an accounting teacher by chance?
An accounting teacher? No.
You're not an accountant. You don't teach accounting?
My dad's an accountant.
I would love to do some T accounts so that I could keep this straight. I'm an accountant by...
I've had the idea, we'll talk later, but basically Google Sheets, you could kind of show that live.
Yeah, that would be cool. So let me ask you this real quick. And Jeff, I want you to hear my question too. The debt that was added when the tax scam passed, okay, that created that extra, I don't know, almost 2 trillion of national debt because we weren't taxing the corporations at the percentage that we had anticipated. Are you with me so far?
I'm with you so far.
Okay. Explain to me, with that situation, what happened? The debt went up. What's the other side of the entry?
The debt would not go up. The other side of the entry.
Yeah, because we're not taxing back what we spent, right? We spent, and then we decided not to we lowered the taxation rates on the corporations. So we're not going to have a give and a take.
We're replacing it with bond sales.
That's how it's been communicated. Now, I might be off base with this.
If you reduce tax revenue in this scarcity mindset of these rules, these current rules, if you reduce tax revenue, you have to increase borrowing. It has to be.
I get it. So then were there bonds issued?
Yes.
There had to be. That's the definition of, the definition.
In other words, the way it worked was
into the market.
During the year, the Treasury Department found that due to the tax cuts, it was collecting much less in taxes than it had been doing the year before. Okay.
Right.
So the tax revenues weren't triggering the issuance of new reserves by the Fed into the Treasury spending account.
Right.
So the Treasury spending account was tending to get lower and was falling below the amount the Treasury likes to keep in the Treasury spending account. I'm not sure what that was in 2010. Okay, it used to have a target of keeping $5 billion, okay, in the account.
You usually put the run rate in there, right? Whatever I'm anticipating spending, I'd want to have in there. I think
that now that run rate is probably a lot higher. It's probably 20 or 25 billion now. because things have changed in terms of the flow of money since 2010. Things are cycling around a lot faster. So they probably need to keep 25 billion in at this point, but I've never checked that. Okay, it's not actually important to me. Okay, but when that balance starts falling below 25 billion, for example, then the Treasury is triggered and says, "Hey, it's time for a bond auction."
Right.
Federal Reserve then holds an auction to sell bonds, which the Treasury Department, okay, is issuing. Okay, so that's what happened. There were uh, roughly $2 trillion, but worth of bonds that were issued, corresponding with the amount of deficit spending, actually, dollar for dollar, pretty much, during the years of the Trump administration. And by the way,
Well, it's still happening, right?
it's still happening, right? But the point is, during the Trump administration, it wasn't simply the $2 trillion in um, terms of lowering taxes, but if you look at the 4 years of the Trump administration, there must have been $8 trillion in deficit spending, or something like that. That $8 trillion in deficit spending corresponded to $8 trillion more in debt instruments that were sold. Okay, and that's why at the end of the Trump administration, we were roughly running at, what was it, $28.5 trillion in terms of the debt subject to the limit. Okay, now, as a sovereign currency issuer, we never had to sell those debt instruments. We could have paid for the overage by minting platinum coins. And it's doubtful that that would have had any different effect on the economy than the effect that we saw. It's doubtful that it would have been any more inflationary than issuing the bonds was. I know that doesn't sound completely commonsensical, but it's not just federal spending which is involved in creation of money, okay, in the economy. The banks also create money, and they create money out of thin air, as you know. So when they create this money out of thin air, banks have the option of lending money to people and taking the treasuries as collateral. And often, when someone has treasuries, they can use that as collateral for multiple transactions. So the treasuries are more valuable as collateral for loans than reserves are. So it turns out.
Okay, hold on. I understand the treasury bonds. When you say reserves, are you talking cash reserves?
I'm talking about reserves in the checking accounts.
Yeah, okay. I'm with you.
Okay, I'm saying the reserves in the checkings account cannot be leveraged for credit in as great an amount as the Treasury securities can be leveraged for credit.
Because the Treasury securities can't be created by the banks.
True, but there's also a treasury bond market, whereas your cash, there's no market like that.
But okay,
right. Okay. So the fact is, we do not know. We do not know at this point. No, there's the common sense view is if you have cash, then that is more inflationary than having treasury bonds. But we don't know that for sure, because there are a lot of factors involved in leveraging treasury bonds. And it may be that having treasury bonds are more inflationary than having but cash. If that's the case, then essentially paying for spending by minting coins may be less inflationary than paying for spending by issuing treasury bonds.
Issuing debt. That would make sense
Yeah, that's
in some way.
irony in the situation.
So can I just ask one more question, getting back to minting that coin and sticking it in the treasury, right? So that we don't have to raise the debt ceiling. We still have to go to Congress to get the what's the word?
The appropriations.
The appropriation. Okay, we still have to go to Congress for the appropriation, but we no longer have a debt ceiling issue.
We no longer have a debt ceiling issue because
the coin's up there.
If you have $100 trillion, okay, and you have that in the bank, okay, in other words, in reserves, and you can pay off the whole national debt as it falls due over 30 years. It's going to fall due over 30 years, okay? And there's going to be a total of roughly $30 trillion in national debt that's going to be paid off, okay, over 30 years. As long as that's going on and people see the national debt falling and falling and falling and falling, then there's going to be no more debt to terrorism. And there's going to be no more, oh, we have to have austerity because the national debt is so high.
Which is
100 it seems like 100 trillion is only going to last for like around 10 years or so.
Well, the way I originally calculated, I thought it would last between 15 to 25 years. But of course, we are spending money at a heavier rate, so maybe it would only last for 10 years. So
why not a quadrillion? Why not a septillion? Why not a nonillion? Why? I mean, why play these games? You know, why? I mean, if you want to eliminate it, let's eliminate it. So, like, why is there a calculation for balancing it that way?
You know what I think it is, honestly?
There was nothing behind the suggestion of the $100 trillion coin except that it seemed like a good meme.
That's okay.
That's
Stephanie Calton, right?
It might make more sense to issue 200 trillion now, or to issue a quadrillion. Okay, as you said, as long as you're going to be so outrageous, okay, that you're going to mint $100 trillion coin, be even more outrageous. Okay, and mint a quadrillion dollar coin. Yeah.
What's outrageous about it? It's just simply eliminating the debt going forward. It's just simply eliminating bond sales for this purpose going forward. That's all it is. It doesn't pour into the economy. It's only used for what Congress allows it to be used.
People find to be outrageous because they do not want to have. I'm going to let in Courtney Love. She's here right now. Okay. Hi, Courtney. Hello, Courtney.
She's frozen.
Okay, let's see. Oh, she's muted. Hello, Courtney. You have to unmute your mic.
Well, all right, Joe. I need to get off in a minute.
Okay.
If you're interested, I mean, I feel like I'm much closer with this, or I probably have some questions, whatever. But if you're interested in some, night reasonably soon, I think it would be interesting to go through that article and secondarily that tweet thread. Secondarily the tweet thread, but I've been written a lot of notes on that libertarian, the FEE article. Not just on the article itself, like I want to debunk the specific things in the article, which I've done, but I also want to talk about the background of that author, of FEE itself, of the backers of FEE, and you have to understand their motivations in order to better understand the article. If you find that interesting, I would enjoy doing that. So we could talk about that.
Okay, so fine. I'll have you back soon to talk about that.
All right, cool. I'm going to go. Thank you. I think I'm most of the way there. Hello, Courtney. I like your music. Just kidding. Sorry. I get the jokes of I get the jokes because of my name, so forgive me.
Granted.
Yeah. Okay.
Jeff, this
All right.
was a pleasure. It's a pleasure.
Thanks, Lisa. Yes, thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Joe. We'll talk again. Sorry this was short, but you seem to kind of understand what the issue is now. So, best of luck.
Thank you, Jeff. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
Okay, so there we are.
Hey, Courtney.
Hey, Courtney, how are you?
Hello, hello. I am nervous about my connectivity, so any apologies that become necessary, I offer up front.
Well, you sound good right now, and you also sound okay, and you look good as well. And so it looks like your connectivity is really good at this point. And Lisa has put on her appropriate clothing for.
We had so many technical difficulties. I had the beret sitting here, but then I forgot to put it on. There we go.
Yeah. We had a tremendous amount of technical difficulties the first half hour or so. So that's why we were late, okay, in finishing up. I'm not sure why Jeff is still here, but he is. So he's still here in the background, but now he's gone. Okay. Okay, so here we are. This is really the second stream, but I made it one big stream, okay, instead, because I didn't want to interrupt things for some time. I see that Amber is here and Lana is here. Sandy Degg is here. Laura Fielding, I think, is probably still here. Hi, Laura. Dolores, of course, is here. Shane is here. And as well, I see Elvira Mihalko. It's probably Elvira Mihalko. Sorry for the pronunciation problem. Elvira. And also Nicole Laurent is here, who says, hey, Courtney. She must be a friend of yours.
She is.
Good. And Jeff says, I am not still here. He says, I am too tired to move. And Laura says, thank you so much, everyone, for donning your vanity project berets. We love our berets. They're not just a vanity project. And hi, Carmen. How are you? Very nice to see you. Okay, Courtney, we thought you might like a chance to talk about your association with the Red Berets, your activities in the Red Berets, and why you've gotten so active, okay, in the Red Berets, and why you're obviously enjoying it so much. So please tell us.
I enjoy it so much because it involves Red Berets, but not just because I'm a fashionista. Clearly, I'm not, since I can't say the word very well. But I'm involved with what was and is no longer Our Revolution Washington, and through that network, I heard of Laura Fielding and the work of Red Berets, Medicare for All, and it turns out Laura and I were in the same city, so it made connecting with a national movement very easy. And then, of course, I had already known about Whole Washington. She became familiar with Whole Washington around that time, and we're both on the board of Whole Washington. So it's a real overlap of cause and motivation, and I have my family has quite a bit of healthcare history. My grandmother worked in hospitals for about 30 years. My aunt worked at one of the hospitals my grandmother worked at. I worked at the same hospital. My co-parent works at that hospital still. We have over 75 years of combined service at one particular hospital.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And then on top of that, who among us is not a patient? So I have my health concerns. I have family members with various health concerns and friends who I've lost. So, the motivation runs deep from both being as a participant of healthcare providing and also a consumer of healthcare.
Okay. So, but tell me some of the events that you've been involved in, some of the activities, okay, that you're involved in on day to day. I noticed that you were involved in the strategy panel, which was, I guess, about a month, okay, or two ago. Okay, so give us your impressions of the experiences that you've had.
Well, there is the panel, and we did the March for Medicare for All recently. Over the years, we've organized around Bernie Sanders. That's why Laura allows me to wear a blue beret at times. She's even allowed me to wear a purple beret at times. So to have that permission slip from her means a lot to me. We have I have participated in abolish ICE activities and defund the police activities, and so many, quite frankly. I'm a part of my local DSA chapter, so I kind of care about everything and do whatever I can to be to support those things. So you when you asked that question, so many things ran into my mind. I don't even know how to put them in order.
Okay,
But
you don't have to put them in order. You can just give us stream of consciousness.
okay, good. Thank
That would
goodness.
be fine.
Yeah. So we've organized an event for Bernie a few years ago where we met more Red Berets and expanded the community and network. And we did our own Red Berets Medicare for All march well before the March for Medicare for All happened. We have organized car caravans and sign wavings. We're expanding to, well, those are plans to be announced later. We'll talk about expansion another time. Let's see. Like I said, I've shown up at in Tacoma, Washington, we have a Northwest Detention Center ICE facility and a liquefied natural gas tank going in at the port. So all of these things are connected to health and well-being of people, even if it doesn't seem so on the surface. Incarcerated people suffer at greater lengths to get the proper health care. LNG and fossil fuels harm our environment and therefore us. So I take an all paths approach. I fight on all fronts, as some of us have been saying.
Oh, good. Right. Okay, so you're for national improved Medicare for all, and you're also for whole Washington.
Absolutely. I see fighting for whole Washington as the greatest local impact I can have on the national push for an improved and expanded Medicare for all.
Okay, but tell us about the People's March.
The People's March? The March for Medicare for All?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, that. So I participated in the Seattle event, and that was very exciting. We had excellent speakers. We had representatives from a diverse group of spaces, including the Black Panthers, and Council Member Shama Sawant and candidate Nikita Oliver. Both are remarkable and impressive people, and I cannot express how exciting it is to have them on the team and be embraced by their campaigns and movements as a part of them, and they a part of us. It was beautiful and very hot.
Yes, it was very hot also in Washington.
That's right. That was the heat
as well. But Laura was referring to the People's March of 2018. I think she recalls you were involved in that march.
Yes. Okay. Yes. That one made me hesitate to plan future marches. We worked hard, and was a lovely team of people, and we had very good turnout, and some incredible artists who performed with us and have remained part of our community. We we just had so much fun, and it was exhausting. That's the problem with asking planners how something went. What I remember is it was exhausting, and I had blisters on my feet afterwards. But the friendships that were cemented and forged in those moments are invaluable, and they carry on.
Okay, so you not only participated in that march, you planned it.
Yeah, well, I'd say Laura carried the weight, and I carried her bags. I carried a bag. There we go.
But what did you think of the strategy panel that you just were involved in?
I like it. It was a diverse crowd. There were suggestions and knowledge from various levels of civic engagement. I believe Dr. Jarvis, he comes kind of from the right in politics, and he comes at it from the knowledge of a doctor. Mariana is a RN, and then I'm just a poor radical activist. I don't have a lot of, when you don't have a lot of financial privilege in your life, you get scrappy. So I'm on the scrappy end of things. And so I liked that there's a little bit of everything, a little bit of something for everyone in that. From writing letters to your Congress people, making phone calls to them, to let's plan following them into bathrooms. I feel like there's a little bit of, there's something for everyone in that event.
Who's your congressperson now?
Marilyn Strickland in Congressional District 10. And, but it is just adjacent to who has been my congressperson for most of my life. Tacoma's divided. And so most of my life has been spent, the last 2 decades have been spent in CD6, which is Derek Kilmer. And Marilyn Strickland, she used to be the mayor of Tacoma. And quite frankly, I don't have anything good to say about either one of them in any position they've ever held.
So are you going to run against Marilyn Strickland one day?
Probably not Marilyn. But there might be a time and place for me to run. I did run for city council in 2019. I made it through the primary, but not through the general, sadly. And so it's not an idea I'm completely averse to, but I do think it's a matter of finding the right race and being the right person for that race. I am just as comfortable and confident, almost more confident, being a part of a strategic team than necessarily the person in the front, because I'm a sassy person with a broken filter, so it's maybe best to limit my time at the microphone at times.
How did you like the experience, of running for council?
Oh, I was thrilled. If I'd done it better, it would have been more exhausting, as is appropriate. So clearly, I could have done better. But I really enjoyed. In 2019, we were deep in Bernie years, but we were pre-George Floyd murder, and so I'm already pretty left. There's a family trauma that involves a police officer who is now in prison for what he did to my family member. Oh. So I know the sweet taste of putting a cop behind bars justifiably. And so I was fairly tempered in 2019 when it.
Oh, no.
There's a little connectivity problem, but it's the kind of thing Courtney should be able to come back from. if she goes out and she reconnects, it should work. So let's see. Oh, here she is again. So let me let her in.
Cool. You're back.
So there was a bit of a connectivity problem, but we were kind of expecting that, actually.
Yeah. I'd say if it happens a third time, we might call it good and thank the audience for their patience.
You know, I've seen people turn their audio off and sometimes just go, or turn the video off and go audio, and that helps. But you're good now, so keep going.
Okay. So when I was running for city council, periodically the question of policing would come up, and supposedly we were like a dozen police officers short based on what, like 1994 standards in proportion to our population. So everybody was like, do you want to add more police officers? And I was the oddball out, saying, I am not someone who thinks that more policing equals more safety. I would like to address the problems that lead to crime. Housing insecurity, food insecurity, and healthcare insecurity. Those things lead to desperation, and desperation leads to crime. So please, let's house people, let's feed people, let's get them healthy. I feel like post George Floyd, the rhetoric can be stronger, and I can be freer with my opinions on that front without tempering myself for the audience. But so I'm excited to see candidates out there who are taking as bold or bolder stance as I did, and in combating the corruption and oppression in the system as it exists now, while having clear and coherent thoughts on what to replace it with.
Your thoughts do sound very clear and coherent.
Oh, thank you.
As a matter of fact, and very sensible to me. Looking back on the strategy panel, how would you express the overall strategy lessons that you got from that panel?
Well, I'm fairly well steeped, so I have to say, and I know, excuse me, I know most of the crowd that was there, so it's hard to point out new things when you're part of the people putting, coalescing ideas together. But I do learn that there are plenty of us who agree with taking more radical stances and efforts. And that is what I find soothes my soul, to know that I am not the only one who is out of patience and ready to step up.
Yes, I've been out of patience for a very, very long time now. I don't understand why I'm not tired from being out of patience, but I'm not tired from being out of patience. It just makes me angrier and angrier as time goes by. You have some very good events that are coming up. What are you planning to do in relation to those events?
Well, I know the crowd has some very good events. I've been a little distracted from keeping tabs on what they are. So my only goal is to be there. So I'm very excited about going down to the Vancouver area, or to the offices of the Vancouver area representative, Annette Cleveland,
Yes,
of the 49th Legislative District, and being loud and obnoxious and on point in that area. And quite frankly, I've been distracted because my LD, my legislative district in the state of Washington, is filling a state Senate vacancy. And so as a precinct committee officer, one of 58, I've been on a short list for candidates to call, and it's been so exciting. This is exactly the type of nerd stuff I enjoy the most. Like, I enjoy electoral because I get to talk about all the topics I care about. including healthcare. And then, but golly, there's something that I just thrive in: candidate vetting and inquiry and strategy. Like, I didn't ask for that. I know it's not a strongly embraced space, but it's my mocha with whipped cream, quite frankly.
Courtney, I just want to say this. I think that I know exactly what you're saying, because I understand where we've got people who are so like, it's not in electoral. You need to get, you need to be in organizing, and you need to get out there. And I understand that, there's a lot to be said for that, because a lot of people, we need to wake up American activism for sure, right? I mean, they do this in Europe all the time. They've been doing it in Europe all the time. America needs something awful like a George Floyd to get people into the streets. And even then, there wasn't enough people in the streets, right? I mean,
Right.
we had segments of the population, but we all needed to get into the streets over that, right? And
Yeah.
so, but I understand what you're saying when you're talking about it's your niche, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you already are in the streets. You already are organizing. So I just wanted to say that I was at that panel with Courtney, and if we had more groups of people like the Red Berets in Washington with Whole Washington and the candidate structure out there, if we could replicate that, we'd be unstoppable.
Right. And I'd like to point out George Jackson, who wrote the Soledad Brothers and Blood in My Eye. He was a Black Panther Party member. In his Blood in My Eye book, he speaks to a vanguard party, which precedes other vanguard activities. And the work of the vanguard party is to prove the ineffectiveness of electoralism so that the broader community can support the other avenues of vanguard action. So, whether or not we find it to be an effective path, it just depends. It's effective if your goal is to agitate and you're agitating. Like I'm an effective radical electoralist. I agitate. I'm present to hold account and advocate for the best I can in good faith. And when it fails, I will not hesitate to move on to the next phase of revolution.
Yes. Tell me more about how you fit the activism into your everyday life.
It can be as simple as going through a drive-through, and when they say, "How you doing?" as they take your money, I say, "Fighting for a living wage, fighting for healthcare for all." And to avoid taking up their time and getting them in trouble, I just leave it there. I don't ask them questions. I'm letting them know. And sometimes they follow up with me the next time they see me, or they look something up after they're off work.
Oh, that's
So
interesting.
yeah, so like I'm all for passive activism as well as the activism that gets you chained to something and arrested. Like, there's a place in the revolution for everyone. Not every place is for every person. I am trying to avoid arrest due to being a parent of a 13-year-old. So like, I don't want to compromise my parenting. But I celebrate those who are so bold and are in a position to do their most extreme part.
Sure. But how does the activism fit in with your job?
Oh, well, as I pointed out, I'm on the less than privileged end of things fiscally. I am seeking disability and currently unemployed. So quite frankly, it's my everything. my activism is my everything.
So you have time now for the activism.
Yes. But also disability takes up part of that time. So
Yes, I'm
it's
sure it takes up a lot of that time.
yeah. So I probably put more time into it than a simple hobby, but also not as much time as a full-time job.
I see. Have you ever heard of the job guarantee proposal?
Well, I've heard of jobs guarantee I'm not sure if it's exactly the proposal. I think a jobs guarantee combined with a universal basic income is a lovely pairing, like wine and cheese.
Well, I'm not going to go into comparison of the job guarantee, okay, and the basic income, okay, or the universal basic income, except to say that there's a difference between pairing a job guarantee and a basic income, as opposed to a job guarantee, okay, and a universal basic income. But that's not as interesting for me to go into as simply to ask you, do you know that there are people out there working to pass a job guarantee law at a living wage with fringe benefits, okay, that are very good, and which pair people with jobs that their capabilities allow them to do that are good for the community.
Yes,
So that
you are.
even if you are disabled at present with respect to the normal job market, if such a job guarantee program, okay, were implemented, uh, you might be quite able to work at a job that was producing value for your community.
That is the idea that calms my panicking heart at night. That it's part of why I ran for city council. I felt like it was easier to run for office than it was to get the help that I knew I needed. And it is easier to run for office than to get help. So, and I thought if I could get into office, I might make a system that would be more easier to navigate and easier to get your needs met. Sadly, I didn't win, and I'm not sure if one person could do that job, but I'm a big fan of using positions of power as bully pulpit. So even if I hadn't managed it on my own, more people would certainly be talking about it.
Okay. Have you ideas that you've developed for new actions the Red Berets might take?
Oh, uh, I I have to like I have big ideas that often need to be tempered down into something that the rest of the crowd will participate in. I'm a little on the radical side, and it takes a community to rein me in a little bit. And I like having that position because I think that we're going to get to where I was starting, but we do need to start in less radical space. So I'm not sure if I've had any specific ideas. I know that I'm building a list and I'm learning about different options of escalation because I know that there's a bit of a gap between escalation tactics from like the basic ones that we're all pretty familiar with, sign waving and door knocking and phone calling and all of that. But then like I can imagine shutting down port.
I was so intrigued with that.
Yeah, so was I, and hopefully Courtney will be able to come back in in just a minute. There she is. There she is. Quickly.
Yay,
Great.
yay. Yeah,
Get you working on.
okay, so I can think of kind of entry-level escalation tactics. Then I can also imagine like top-level escalation, like shutting down ports. And I know that I have more to learn at what happens between those two things. And that's what I'm doing now. I am building up my knowledge so that I can apply my enthusiasm more responsibly.
So you're researching different kinds of tactics. So it's
Yes.
filling the gap in between the entry level escalation tactics and the shutting down the port strategy
Yeah.
and tactics.
Yeah. I think it's probably a good idea to fill that gap with a few more levels of strategy.
Courtney, you're awesome. You're awesome, Courtney.
So the Red Berets are going to be able to count on you.
Yes.
To think about a variety of different kinds of escalations that we might try
Yes.
over
And it's
a period of years.
and it's part of why I engage in different groups, because different groups are comfortable with different levels of strategy. I am a precinct committee officer within the Democratic Party. I am a DSA member. I am a Red Beret. I'm on Whole Washington board. There are just some things the board will not want to be done under Whole Washington's banner. I'm also engaging with the Black Panther Party. Maybe there are tactics that the Black Panther Party is eager to take up where other groups are a little shyer, a little more reserved. So to me, it's kind of like, not only should I fill out my knowledge base of strategy and tactics, I should also know which group is more likely to embrace and enact those things.
You know, Courtney, don't you feel like, I mean, I'm feeling like this. I think you've been steeped in this for longer from a different angle, but in the last 2 years, the groups that like you're discussing in my local area, and we are not anywhere near as well connected as you guys are out in Washington. And I think that part of that is because you used to have caucus primaries, right? And people were more engaged in sitting down and talking because that's how you had to do it in the first place. And I lived out there for 19 years. So, but anyhow, in my travels now, because of the Red Berets, I've gotten myself involved in other groups, and you get to know them, and and then you watch them morph, because they all do, and ebb and flow, right? And varying levels of their radicalization of them, where they're going and what they're not doing. But I'm learning now how to cross-pollinate ideas, especially when they are emerging and emergent in their need to be addressed. So, and how those ideas are introduced to those varying groups is important, right? Because you have to know how to couch an issue if somebody might be interested versus probably won't be interested, but you need to know that this is going on over here, as opposed to the crowd that's going to be like, where do you want me? Where are we going? What are we doing?
Right. And there's even like Bernie Sanders, the Amendment King, knew that for some things that he wanted to see passed, it would be best to introduce them under somebody else's name. So like I'm even strategizing, maybe this idea needs to be presented by somebody else who is better heard in that space, or who has less tension with other people in that space. Like it's all like, it's layers of politics on layers of politics.
Yeah. And you know what else that is? That's like harnessing your resources and deploying them to their strengths, right? Like,
yeah,
there's always somebody who is going to be a front person, or you're going to have a couple front people, right? But depending on their personality, depending on their demeanor, this one would be better over here. This one is, oh, you're the one that I need to go to this council meeting over here in, King County or Allegheny County or whatever it is. As opposed to you, I'm going to send down, let me see, here it would be, I want you to go to the mayor of Wilkinsburg and talk to the mayor of Wilkinsburg. And those two people might not be the same people, but those energies work in those places better than others.
Yes.
That's critical. You can't have the same people going to the same places. Just because you've got somebody out front doesn't mean there's always 4 or 5 people behind them working behind the scenes, right?
Yeah. Or I really, I say this sarcastically, enjoy it when people present a minority view, like it has greater backing. Like, well, some of us are a little concerned about this, and it turns out it's 2 people.
Right. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So filtering out that stuff is its own, I don't know, social burden or adventure time, if you will.
What do they call that? The is it a glad fly? Is that the term where you go in and you say the things that nobody's willing to say, but you know everyone is thinking or everybody should be thinking? Yeah. That's all.
I might start using that tactic. Well, some of us are concerned about when I've only checked in with 3 other people, but it make it sound like half the chapter or half the group is behind me.
Hey, if you know the crowd, give it a try. I mean, we might as well start using their tactics on them.
Yeah, there's a lot of tactics that I like. If they're using them, I'll use them. I own it. Like, if it's not against the rules and they're using it, maybe we should use it. But I do have to say that my natural inclination is straightforwardness and honesty. So when I have to, like, sometimes it's exciting when it feels like politicking. That's when it's exciting. When it feels like I have to manipulate this to get my way or to be heard, like, I start, like, if I have to manipulate a situation, I start, second guessing, like, maybe my case isn't strong enough then. And so that's where it's like, that's where I get caught up, is like, I have a pretty strong personal ethic on honesty. And oftentimes if I'm in a situation where I feel like I have to put in effort to manipulate, it's more about those situations where it would just be better to be heard, to have it come from somebody else. Like, the idea is a winning idea. I'm the problem in this space.
Oh, I'm not the person to present it, do you mean?
Yes.
Like, you don't feel like
the conflict will be with me and whatever the past is, rather than the idea. So yeah, I am painfully forthright.
That's a good way to be, though. And manipulating a situation, I think that's a strong word. Sometimes when people have tried to manipulate you, if you use the same language and the same approach, sometimes it doesn't have to be a critical space, but if you turn that around and give it back, sometimes you get their attention and you can earn that respect, because they're not expecting that from you, right? And I truly believe that a lot of the left is coming from this place where we think that we can just make them see the way that we see it, we'll get converts. And no, not always. Most of the time, it's not that way. That is politics, right? But I think that what's happening right now is that the left is we're commanding respect. We're getting over that hill all over the place, even on the hill.
Yeah, I am impressed with this. I'm a little worried it's a 2-step forward, 4-step back situation. So I'm not. I'm tempering my enthusiasm. But when you mentioned if we can just explain it to them and make sure that they understand, I feel like people who, like in Washington with Whole Washington, I want to dot the I's and cross the T's, have meetings with our legislators, make sure that they get a printout of the facts and frequently asked questions about Whole Washington, make sure they understand the bill. But quite frankly, they are paid not to understand the bill. And so while I think it's important to dot the I and cross the T, much like the Vanguard.
Come back.
She went out a little bit. And here she is again. There you are again.
Hey. So, well, like I said, dot the I's and cross the T's, because the duty of the vanguard party is to show its ineffectiveness. I also resent the amount of time and effort we have to put into dotting the I's and crossing the T's, because we know that we're fighting major money here, and it's not just about convincing people to understand, and maybe if we say it differently they'll like it better. It's an abuse that just reminds me of abusive relationships. And so I want to dot the I, cross the T effectively and efficiently, and move on to the next step, you know.
Yeah,
and
that's great.
follow them into the bathroom.
So about
Waiting for you to say that from the very first.
just want to point out though that there is a time and a place where that explanation, depending on how many people are in your audience, right? If you're dealing with a committee or a political organization that you already know is never going to convert, right? That's one thing.
Yeah.
But if you've got an audience of folks and you're in that situation when you are debating, I guess, or refuting, right?
Mm-hmm.
The value is in who hears you in your audience that might want that or be hungry for that information, right?
Yeah. Well, I was strictly limiting that assessment to the elected officials in our state legislature.
Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah. But you're right. Like, organizations are worth the effort, for sure.
Sometimes.
Well, yeah. I mean, almost like a lot of Democratic Party organizations in Washington have endorsed Whole Washington, but it doesn't mean they're out there getting signatures. It doesn't mean that
or doing anything for you, right?
Yeah, right. They're not donating to the campaign. It feels like it feels a little rote and demonstrative. But at the same time, when those pass, like I had someone reach out to me who we often disagree on policy or which candidates to support, but he's a doctor and a rural doctor. And as soon as Whole Washington was brought up in his LD and it passed, he like reached out to me and was like, where do I get petitions? And I was like, hot dog. Right? I love connecting with people who I otherwise don't. So I love, like, you get strange bedfellows in politics, but I like finding them. I like finding where I have connection with people. And quite frankly, no war but class war. And that means we will have to find a connection with people who are to the right of us. And we need to be persuasive and compassionate, because a lot of their anger and fear is centered in desperation and scarcity, just like the rest of us, only they have been moved or raised just in a different direction or space than we have. And I can, as a city council person, I have connected with people to the right, and they'll say, well, I don't like the Democratic Party. And I say, I don't either. And then they say, well, our tax system is screwy. And I say, I agree. And then they say something else disparative, and there's a lot of corruption. And I'm like, I agree. And by the third time you agree with them, their head's exploding and they're like, what's going on here? And then you can swoop in. And God, do I swoop in.
Yeah, I've been on calls where we've been talking from all over the state. And I hear opinions that, well, for whatever reason, the rural folks are just really down on Black Lives Matter. And you listen to that for a minute, and then I just said, you guys, just because your problems don't look like an urban inner city Black community's problems, your problems and their problems, it's all the same source that's causing the problem, right? Mm-hmm. And that made everybody stop and think. And I think for maybe the first time that in that space, something like that had been said, because the conversation that's ensued after it lasted for quite a while, and it was pretty robust.
Yeah, I have
Come back, Courtney.
She's used to it's dropping off now and having to come back so she can do it quickly. And there you are again.
I feel like that this should probably be the last time it's so fast. It really returning to the meeting isn't burdensome on my end.
Yeah, and it's not on our end either, so you can.
Yeah, it's quick. It's not a big
Okay.
deal.
It's
Okay,
quick.
good. Then I'll be persistent.
Good.
There you go.
I was going to say, I have friends and family in rural areas, and they're impacted by hospital closures and inconsistency in care and educating their children. And like, it sounds so similar. The big picture problems sound similar wherever you're at. Education, food, healthcare, housing. It's relevant to everyone, and humans suffer the same needs, shall we say?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
and so the problems for activists is to show people, okay, in other unfamiliar spaces that they really have problems in common with people who are in completely different spaces, and sometimes almost translations of language, certainly translations of terminology, are necessary to see that, to understand it, and to put people together.
Mm-hmm.
I think
And
a lot- Oops,
go
sorry.
ahead.
I was just going to say, I think a lot of the time, if you can just show people that you actually care about what they're saying, then you transcend the red, blue practice jersey thing.
Yeah. And I'd say that, on the left, you've got people, I'm not going to work with, I'm not going to organize with people on the right. And it's like, I'm not asking you to organize with people on the right. I'm asking you to reach out to people on the right and start the conversation that will dissuade them from staying on the right.
Or just liking you as a human being, right? Because if they
Right.
like you as a human being and you're running for office, they'll vote for you.
Right. And I mean, even outside of like, if we're going to change racism in America, it's going to take a lot of white people who know better to do the work with the white people who don't.
You don't know better. I agree with you there 150%. Absolutely.
Yeah. So like I'm all about what tactic for this moment. And so there are moments where I would not begrudge someone a Nazi punching opportunity. But I don't think Nazi punching at Thanksgiving dinner is appropriate. I think that's when you have conversation with racist Uncle Steve, right? Like, but like this will like and connecting with your neighbors. Like I have friends who are in rural areas. They're communists, my friends, and they don't get to pick who their neighbors are. And so, the guy who works on the tractor is a Trumper. The guy who feeds the goats when they're out of town, is a libertarian. Like, so like you build community around what you have in common. Yes. And hopefully kind of like
Hello again.
Hello. So hopefully when you find the things you have in, something you have in common, it opens the door to have harder discussions that are that will help reshape the culture of your neighborhood, your county, your state, your nation.
So you sound like you're in large measure functioning as a community organizer.
I hope that's what I'm doing. Though I think organizers would also say a lot of what I do is simple activism, and I'm not insulted by either. I'm both, I hope. And I think that I could, with more information downloads, become an even better organizer. I started as an activist, not knowing the difference between activism and organizing. and I'm still learning. Like I'm not going to give definitions. There are better people for that. Google searches will do that. But I'm building more skills, and I think that's the best anybody can be doing right now.
You seem to
Well
be
said.
able to work at connecting with people on a human level where they are, and just trying to talk to them from that point of view.
Yeah, I'd like to think so. I think that's a person-to-person opinion. But I do think I'm a people person, and I think that the majority of people, when they meet me, think I'm nice or smart or funny or all of it. And but when you meet me strictly through politics, you might only see a cutting edge, right? So I recognize that different people have different opinions of me, but I'd say generally speaking, I come from a compassionate and positive space. I like to tend to people. I like to care about them, and I want. And if part of that means I have to fight for them, so be it.
So I'm perceiving that you find it easy to like people.
Yeah, I do. I find it easy to be disillusioned and pissy with people too, but it doesn't mean I don't want them to have Medicare for all.
Well, there you go, right? There you go. There you go.
Universal programs, even for the assholes.
Well, after all, that's democracy, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's a good definition of democracy. Universal programs, even for the assholes. I like that. We came up with some pretty good things here the last a couple of days, like the fall of Rome and the hospitals.
And the fall of Rome is in the hospitals. I said that last night.
In the hospitals, right?
I like the effective radical electoralist. I'm going to ask somebody to make you a meme because that's pretty cool. I like that.
Thank you.
So who can we ask to make her a meme?
Oh, I don't know. There's plenty of people. Fran makes memes, but she's on vacay. But I mean, there's people. We'll find one.
Jeffrey.
Yep. Jeffrey will make you one.
I say almost Jeffrey.
Yeah, there's
Oh,
Jeffrey,
like I know you're watching, Jeffrey. Yep.
He was watching earlier. I'm not sure that he's still here. Haven't seen comments from him but lately. But Laura says, I think the three of you will appreciate the tweet with YouTube live link I just sent out. Well, thank you, Laura.
Thanks, Laura. I'll have to go check, right?
I hope my lipstick look good.
You hope you what?
I said I hope my lipstick looks good, Laura.
Yes, it does.
It does look good.
Okay.
And Laura says, by Courtney Love is able to make us laugh, which is so important. Ask her frequent response when people say, I'm fine, when asked to sign the whole Washington petition. So
that only happened once, and it was off the cuff. I can't say it would go over well as a plan, but someone came out of the building and I said, want to sign for single payer? And he said, I'm fine. And he walked away, but like within 4 steps, I said, I'm not. And he turned around and said, oh, well, what's this for? And then I told him, and he was like, oh, I'll sign that.
You know, it's like one of those things. It's like you never know what's going to capture someone's attention. But when you got that little bit of an edge to get people to go, what's going on over there?
Yeah.
That works.
Yeah. So like I said, I don't think it should be in signature collecting training classes, but for you sassy bitches out there, there is a place for us. Don't hide.
Sure there is. Sure there is.
And I did not check in with the language regulations. I hope I haven't been stepping on anybody's delicate earwaves.
So tell me, is
You're
there a
good.
place for sassy bastards out there too?
Of course.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, there are.
In fact, I double down. I am also technically a bastard.
Oops.
I was put. I like to say that I was trapped in this body by 2 drunk teenagers.
That's good. That is good. It's a pleasure to see you, Courtney. I didn't.
It's good to see you too.
Joe had said to me earlier, but I was running around doing a couple different things, and I remember that Jeff was coming back on, and I knew you were coming, but I didn't realize it was tonight. So I'm very, very happy that I'm here with you.
Me too. Good to see
Right,
you.
and that was in part a coincidence because you were anxious to come on so you could ask either me some questions with Jeff there or Jeff some questions with me there, right?
Yeah, well, I love Jeff's questioning of MMT, and he was digging into the same thing that you and I had a discussion on. And then I sent him an email and he replied back. I just like the way he thinks because I understand it. And Joe, you are so steeped and brilliant in this. And you're used to thinking about it with your logic, right? So when I found Jeff and he's like, yeah, I need to ask him this and I need to ask him that. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm not the only one. So I just thought that if we were here to talk, have that discussion with you, we might be able to flush some more stuff out without being intimidated and thinking, oh God, am I going to sound stupid here? Just, it's hard. It's like your new professor, right? That's what this is.
Yes. Okay.
I would like to say that in another space, someone was promoting an infrastructure bank or something. I'm not going to do the cause justice, but they're like, one of their questions to us was, how do we get this better, more well known? And I said, pick a fight with the MMT crowd. And he goes, I don't think the MMT crowd would have any problem with this. I said, that's okay. Pick a fight with them anyway.
You'll not pay attention? Is that it?
Yeah. Make them argue or make sure they love you. But if the MMT crowd knows about you, the rest of them will know about you.
That's funny.
That's pretty good advice, certainly.
It actually is in hindsight.
Depending on which part of the MMT crowd you're talking about, you might be in for a few months of hard times until things.
I don't know. I think that's over.
Yeah. Well, I still.
Right, but it was a few months of hard times, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
it was. But look at where we are now.
Yeah, we're in a good place now. I know.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but now it's my go-to solution. You want to get known, pick a fight, and there's a crowd right over here willing to fight.
I think that's a pretty good rule for Twitter, actually. It seems to work there pretty well.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to, oops.
She'll be back in a second. Give her 5 seconds.
Yeah, I'll give her 5 seconds. Then I think we'll go to some of the comments. Because I think we have quite a few comments and here we go again. Okay, so I think it might be time to go to the comments because.
Did she just disappear? Oh, there she is.
Not really. She didn't really disappear.
I'm going to step away, Joe, but go. I'll be back. Keep going.
I was indulging in an inhalation.
Okay.
I'm in Washington, so it's allowed.
Sure. Absolutely. Some things are allowed here, too. It's not as bad as it used to be.
Good.
Okay. So Carmen Muniz makes a comment I thought was kind of interesting. Can we pool our funds donations together and just buy a Red Beret administered hospital? What an idea. Oh, Courtney was thrown out of one. I think that's a very good comment, but wait to see if Courtney has something to say about that. Okay, did you catch that full idea? Can we pool our funds, donations together, and just buy a Red Beret administered hospital?
I'm okay with that. I think it might be more effective to get it in a whole state. So I recommend investing in a Red Beret to get a statewide program somewhere, because it's one statewide program in one place. Much like, Washington and Colorado legalized cannabis on the same day, and now more than half the states and the District of Columbia have some form of legal cannabis.
What other states have been paying attention to the whole Washington proposal? In terms of details, do you know?
Georgia Davenport is probably the better person to ask, because as far as I think, pretty deeply involved with the one payer states group. And so California and New York knows about us, and I think Maine and Oregon. I know in the last gubernatorial race in Colorado, the governor was throwing around the idea of Colorado and the West Coast coming together for a single payer system throughout. But I don't know if he's actually built a relationship around it. So, and Arizona, I think, so we have some really dedicated people in the one payer state space who are also whole Washington volunteers. Each state has to modify a bill.
Okay, one more time. Here we go. Okay.
Sorry. Yeah. Each state would have to modify the bill to fit their funding mechanisms that are allowed with their state taxes, but the bill is just rather golden, and I think a lot of people see that, and putting in their state specifics into the structure we have is not a foreign idea.
Well, one thing I thought was really particularly good about the Washington structure, and that was the funding structure. I'm talking about the part that the state is responsible for, was the fact that the payroll taxes, but for the employers, those are very effective at raising necessary funds to close the gap. And they're also a good trade-off, actually, for the employers, because the employers who've been offering health care in the first place save a lot of money by going to the payroll tax, okay, instead of having to support their own health care program with a private insurance group. So,
And paying an administrator half the time. There's so much expense in that.
Yeah. I heard one small business owner say they paid a little over 20% to.
Yeah, 8.5 is nothing.
Right.
Yes, 8.5 was nothing, and I guess in Jerry Friedman's study, he found that people were paying somewhere between 18 and 20% for
the individual
coverage.
Mm-hmm.
The employer.
Oh, the employer. Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, 18 to 20%. Okay, over salaries. Okay, for that. In other words, that was the multiplier. So to pay only 8.5% as the employer's share, that's basically lowering the multiplier from 18 to 20% to 8.5%. It's a no-brainer.
Plus,
yeah,
the reduction in your administrative costs in your billing, if you are a provider, on top of that healthcare savings. I mean, now you're talking a solid, could be 25-30% savings.
Sure.
Yeah. And even if the employer opted to pay the 2% that the employee could, I believe that's part of it, is that it was 8.5 for the employer, but they could, as a benefit, they could offer to pay the employee's portion. But then that's all in Gerald Friedman's first study, and I don't know the new study I wrote, but it seems that we can eliminate the monthly
Premium.
I'm sorry.
Premium.
Yep, monthly premium, and the condition we had it. If you chose to have name brand medications over generics that are available, you could accrue up to a $250 pharmaceutical bill each year. That would be eliminated, and the payroll tax could probably go down even lower.
Yes, it could be, but with the payroll tax as it is, the employee payroll tax and the employer payroll tax covers 88.1%, 88.1% of the projected revenues that would be raised in support of the program. Altogether, all the sources, of revenue produce a surplus in the first year of $227 billion.
Sounds right.
Yeah. So
I do rely on cheat sheets and Cindy Jacobs for this part of the conversation a lot.
It's really cool though when you go through that and you realize how self-sustaining that legislation, that plan actually is. There's so much to learn and teach and coordinate and help other efforts see. And every state's different, right? So nobody's saying that this is going to extrapolate over every state, but the knowledge base of putting people together and working through that in a core team is just invaluable to standardize and be able to speak to the plans and help the efforts along the way, be it to help them put a ground game together, because whole Washington's got volunteers. The other states that haven't gone ballot initiative, they don't have their plan socialized out in the general population. Whole Washington is light years ahead of that because you've had, your first ballot initiative, then your second one, and then you had to postpone. But then, you've got the people in the state, talking, learning. You've got that base.
Yes,
the other states don't necessarily have it, other than California, but they had a different push.
California and New York have some good push because the three of us have bills to represent. The other states, maybe a couple of them do have bills, but I don't know if their shortcomings are too great to create this kind of motivation or what. But I just feel like the first step is get a bill, write a functional bill, one that's implementable. It's my understanding. I did read the New York bill. It seemed like we have an 80-page bill. I felt like their bill was kind of on the short side, but they don't make room for the Taft-Hartley ERISA protected healthcare plans that some labor unions have. And so, like, a major labor organization, I think it was the Municipal Central Labor Committee or something, came out strongly against the New York bill. And even if it passed, there would be a court case and it would be struck down. So
she makes a very good point there.
Yep. Well, that's, these are the reasons why I think it would be great to get as much of that legislation together and start looking at it so that,
Yeah, I think that too. Okay, you're back.
I am.
I think that was a very good point you just made.
And in California's bill, I think the funding mechanisms aren't as well established. And so there's a lot of back and forth about how to fund it. I think that's the main problem there. So Washington's bill dodges those problems. And I recommend that anybody in any state just be cognizant of the limitations at a state level. You have to make room for ERISA protected plans, and get your funding worked out. We also have our bill's been screened by the Department of Revenue, and something to do with employment security office or something like that. So like all the feedback we've gotten from those agencies have been so vital at making it so that should this bill pass, it is a smooth transition to be applied.
Yes,
And
that is overwhelmingly important.
yeah, so just write a solid bill and check in with state agencies, and they will respect you and know about you then.
Right,
Yes.
and make sure the revenue sources in the bill, from the state point of view, okay, are very solid and would withstand economic shocks to a considerable degree. That's why I like the payroll tax structure of it. It takes care of so much of the gap that has to be covered. And even in cases where there was a little bit, even more than a little bit, of a collapse of the economy, there's still going to be jobs. There's still going to be payroll. In the worst of all recessions, 75% of the people are still going to have jobs. There's still going to be payroll there. So there are going to be funds that will be coming into the plan. And with a few years of surplus to, give the plan a cushion, it's going to be impossible to sink it. It's just going to be sustainable until there is a federal program.
Yeah. And I do want to make space for the states who might not have a strong enough economy. I wouldn't argue that all states can do it. I'm too underinformed to make that statement. So, but for all the states that can, they should.
Yes, I entirely agree. I often make the point that as those states get it, oh, she had another connectivity problem, but she should be back in just a second. Hopefully. There she is. Okay, so the point I was making is that as a number of states actually get it, and people in other states, are going to want it. And if they have state legislatures that are blocking single payer in those states, what's going to happen is that pressure will increase on the senators from those states, the United States senators on those states, to get a national program so their own people can be covered. So in one sense, the more success that we have at the state level, the more pressure should be generated on states that are blocking single payer plans on their senators, and that would strengthen the national plan, of course. We have another interruption. And Courtney's back.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm in a rural space right now. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay, so but I think you got that point.
Yeah.
Right.
And I fully agree. I absolutely agree. And when wildfire catches, it spreads kind of as the wind blows, but also in ways you don't expect. So we can't even project accurately how much pressure will increase in all the various ways. But it's it's all necessary and beneficial.
Yeah, in the social sciences, that's sometimes known, okay, as emergence. We can't tell what's going to happen because the phenomenon, okay, is an emergent one. And I think the reason why it looks like, okay, it's an emergent one from us is so many different factors are coming together. We cannot track all those factors. We cannot tell what the influences, okay, are going to produce. We only know there are so many factors coming together and anything can happen.
Precisely.
Yeah, but I
kind
think
of had the
it's,
same feeling around Force the Vote.
and
Yeah,
it worked. And it worked, even though nobody wants to give the credit where credit is due. It worked. It didn't work on January 3rd, but they got it.
well,
Yeah, it made some changes. I'm sorry, Joe.
I think it made some changes, but as I like to say and have said really very frequently, I think the Force the Vote effort actually asked for too little. It should have asked for Nancy Pelosi's replacement on January 3rd, and then a much better deal could have been made with any successor to the left of her. And the only people who could have gotten the support of the full caucus were people who were a little to the left of her. In other words, it might not have been possible for Jayapal to come forward as a speaker, but it was certainly possible for Debbie Dingell or Jan Schakowsky, or say someone like a Rosa DeLauro or a Karen Bass. It was possible for any of those to have become the speaker if they had gone for Pelosi's head at that time. And I think that's what they should have done. That was a big mistake. I don't think the effort was thought through really that.
Oh, it wasn't thought through because it was coming from the outside. I think that is a wonderful strategy to apply, but it would have had to come from inside the house. Like the squad would have had to been organizing amongst themselves with this idea, but the Force the Vote came externally from the masses, so to speak. And so that
did come from the masses, so to speak, but the point being, what they were asking was just a floor vote, okay, for Medicare for all, which may not have seemed to have been, okay, a worthwhile reward for what people were asking the squad, okay, and the CPC to do. On the other hand, if they had been asked to consider the replacement, okay, of Nancy Pelosi, since they had the votes to do that easily, even the squad could have done that. It was so close. If someone could have spoken to them about all they might have gained from a successor candidate, maybe then they would have organized internally. Not on January 3rd, but of course, some people were trying to reach them from 2 weeks before that on to get them to organize to get rid of her. And there was no way to get through the noise that was coming from the Force the Vote people who were only talking about a floor vote for Medicare for all. I mean, yes, a floor vote for Medicare for all was very important, but you could have gotten a floor vote for Medicare for all. You could have gotten a floor vote for various kinds of Green New Deal things, a floor vote for, student debt elimination. You could have gotten those things. And you also could have gotten the Medicare for all floor vote too, and better committee positions and rules changes, important rules changes, like, for example, a rules change where you could always get a floor vote if you had 20 co-sponsors for a bill. If you had a rules change like that, it would greatly have reduced the power of the oligarchy in Congress.
How many co-sponsors
that would be
do they need
amazing.
now?
Huh?
How many do they need now?
Over 100. Oh, it's I thought I was saying we have over 100, but I think it's just on Pelosi to call for a floor vote.
Right. It's basically, she has the power, okay, to direct the traffic. She can give a floor vote to people who have only 20 co-sponsors.
Could
Okay,
she give a floor vote to people who only have 5?
Yeah, I think she can do that too.
Okay, that's
If
my
she wants
question.
to.
Was there a
She's
floor?
very, very powerful. She actually determines it. Okay, the speaker determines it. But if a rule will put in that it doesn't have to be 20, it could be 40, it could be 30, I'm not sure what number. But if it's a number where there has to be some popular support for a bill, okay, but not just a huge amount, okay, of popular support. I don't know if 20 is the right number or 25 is the right number, 30 is the right number. It's probably somewhere in that range. And for the Senate, maybe it should be 10 senators or something like that. But if rules like that were passed in both of the houses, okay, of Congress, then it would be much easier to get floor votes for important things and get people on record. And,
Yes.
I think maybe that's what we need.
And I will say that I like all of your suggestions. And as soon as David Sirota came out with his suggested of expanded demands, I was on board with that. Like, and the more creative. But I think that if it successfully moved the House members to force a vote and all of these suggestions, to do more than just force a vote through Nancy Pelosi, which is a doable flex, but to also replace her, I do think it would have had to been maybe more than 2 months of advanced planning, because they'd want to whip the votes and have communication with people. They'd want whoever they were putting forth to be willing to accept that position, and to advocate for themselves. So I'm a little leery. I mean, I do want to replace Pelosi, but I also feel like it just would have had to have traveled a different road. The force to vote as it happened from the outside, where we were hoping that the House members would like, oh, well, heck yeah, we're going to, wield some power. I think that the expectation I think it would have just been harder on that time frame to replace Pelosi as it would to twist the screws on Pelosi. But I fully support replacing her. She is the most hated politician in the United States. So there's not a lot of risk to pissing people.
The fact that she was voted in again, on January 3rd, had an influence when it came to the ARP bill, specifically taking out the $15 an hour. She didn't have to accept that. When the bill came back to the House, she could have said, no, this bill doesn't pass until the $15 an hour, is back in it. And then if Schumer had folded and put it back in, and Manchin and Sinema and the others had to vote to tank the ARP, they never would have done that, and we would have had the $15 an hour provision today. So that's one thing. Okay. The second thing is she deserted. She deserted in this latest round. She was supposed to be the barrier, but who was sticking with the progressives all the way. And she switches sides. Okay, that's a problem. But Ro Khanna introduces his state-based bill in the early spring. She won't give it a floor vote. Okay, there's that as well. There's something that's also escaping me right now, but there's a third thing that's really, really important that she screwed up on, and that a replacement speaker probably wouldn't have screwed up on. And so, okay, I think it was very damaging to reelect her, okay, as speaker. And
I don't
I
know.
wonder,
it was a big mistake.
Do you think she screwed up, or do you think she did exactly what she wanted to do? What she,
Well, from our point of view, she screwed up.
Yeah, but she didn't screw up.
do
She's
think-
screwing us.
Yes,
There
but
we go.
Yeah. and
the
and
point
quite
is,
frankly,
how different would our lives be now if she had been defeated on January 3rd? So I think what you have to say is that's a mistake that's on the squad.
well, I also
CBC.
I wonder,
Popular.
you know, I don't know enough about the donors of the list you offered as replacements for Pelosi, but I fear that most of the people in the House will have donor lists that will, depending on what the bill is, will it's a rotating villain situation. So maybe we'd get a vote on this thing, but not on this other thing, because that's who this person's donors represent.
You're right.
So,
but all the people I mentioned were very strong supporters, okay, of the $15 an hour minimum wage. Okay. But in Debbie Dingell's case, trying to pass a Medicare for All bill is a family business. Okay, it goes back to the 1940s in her family. So, and with respect to Rosa DeLauro, she's a person who's for greatly strengthening the family safety net. She was the person actually behind the family tax credits at this point. But Jan Schakowsky has been lefty on quite a number, okay, of issues, and Karen Bass, okay, as well. Okay, so what I'm saying is all of them would have been great improvements over Nancy Pelosi. And we can't forget as well that if we replace Pelosi, we disempower Clyburn, Hoyer, Hakeem Jeffries. They're all knocked out. And that would be so important for change.
Yeah. I do have to get going here shortly.
Okay.
But I wanted, are there more comments or?
There are some more comments.
I've seen your show a couple times. I know how you wrap it up.
You know how I wrap it up?
Well, you might have to stick around a little bit, but yeah.
Okay, so Laura says, when the candidates we vet and support are our fellow agitators as they are in Washington State, when we interstate, we FOAF, again, these things are inextricably linked.
Yes, they are.
Yes. I'm all for winning positions, but I want to make sure those people who win those positions do not become a part of the system, that they agitate from within, much like Shama Sawant does in Seattle.
Yes, and I entirely agree with that, of course. We all want what Shama Sawant does in Seattle, but we would like that at the national level, too. It's so very important.
Just to shout out there, December 7th is that recall election, and the concern is that the working class is going to be really sparse at showing up to the polls. Kashama went on Joy Gray's show today and expressed this very concern. And she said, this election being on December 7th is really going to favor the corporate class as far as getting them out and voting. So
yeah, there's been a lot of displacement. People are losing their homes and moving around.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
So yeah, it's scary. I also keep the faith, shall we say.
we
I
can do
hope
things
so.
to help motivate people too. So
So yeah, I'm all for the vanguard politics of things. So yep, fight on all fronts.
So Senator Joe Manchin thinks healthcare is an entitlement, but oil subsidies aren't. Yes, I know how Joe Manchin thinks. I think we all know how Joe Manchin thinks.
Yeah, well, quite frankly, healthcare and Social Security and all that, we are entitled to it, and oil companies are not entitled.
I certainly agree, but she'll be back in 1 second. Yeah, she is. Okay, so I certainly agree with that, but I would emphasize one other thing. Specifically, what is an entitlement? An entitlement is a right. It is something that we have a right to. It's a synonym, okay, for right. Healthcare, okay, is a human right. So yes, it is an entitlement. We should be proud of that entitlement. That is not, okay, a negative word. When someone tries to take our entitlements, take them away from us, or not give us what we're entitled to, that should be the point where we fight and where we get very, very tough and where we do whatever is necessary to get what we are entitled to. I had to do that bit of preaching. I'm sorry, Lisa.
why are you sorry? Don't be sorry.
Well, sometimes I don't want to preach quite as much, okay, as I do preach.
Preach, preach, brother, preach.
Your
We
your
need it.
sermons are soothing to the soul, sir. Please preach.
Oh, thank you, Courtney. Laura says, I think the three of you appreciate the tweet with YouTube link I just sent out. Do you happen to check that out, Lisa?
I did, and I don't even remember. I retweeted it and then came back to the conversation because I was so interested. Let me just think. What was it? Oh, it's just she's tweeting out the link, and it's cool. It says Joe Firestone is live right now with Red Berets. Whole Washington board member and vice chair of ORWABC, Courtney's at, and it says as well as 50 lines only, which is mine. And she says, get fof. I mean, she's got some good language here. And it says Convo with Jeff Epstein on MTFC, mint the coin, mint the, yeah, like that. Why do I keep stumbling over the F word while we're alive? Okay.
I have no idea why you keep stumbling over the F word.
But Joe, you're gonna. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Courtney Love on her Red Beret activism.
Nice. And Joe, you're gonna get a terrible reputation for platforming Courtney Love and Jeff Epstein.
Why?
It's a name. It's a play on the name.
Oh, my goodness. That's right. Oh my gosh. I didn't even think of it that way.
Yeah, I didn't see it that way either.
That's hysterical.
Yeah, my name, I feel like if I do ever get arrested, nobody will know it because they'll see the headline Courtney Love arrested and they won't care. Like no news there. And so my kind of theme is I do what I want. Because with my name, I'm kind of hidden a little bit in a strange way.
That's neat.
Carmen says, I love that. Universal health care, even for the assholes and unsinkable turds.
Oh, goodness.
Okay. So Go Start, also known as Steve Gonzo, says, Joe Manchin is telling colleagues that progressives need to pick just one of Biden's 3 signature policies for helping working people and discard the other 2. That's what people familiar with the matter, okay, are saying.
I'm just going to not say anything. I can't even anymore.
Yeah, let's not say anything really, really nasty about this. Nah, let's say something really, really nasty about this.
You know, Joe Manchin just needs to go jump off the back of his damn yacht. I mean, seriously.
Yeah, what I think
I'm
Joe
tired.
Manchin
Why
needs to do
stop
is-
reporting on what Joe Manchin says? I don't care anymore.
Yeah,
I really don't. We all know he's going to try and sink this, and if Biden and crew let him, they're going to lose badly. And if
that's
they haven't
what I
figured
think.
that out yet, okay, what do? We say we're going to keep doing what we're doing, but they know they're going to lose. They know we know they're going to lose.
I'm so scared of the impending desperation. I'm scared on behalf of our society.
I am too. Yep.
I have to admit that I am also very afraid of our society because we know that time clock is counting down and time is very short and we need action yesterday, many yesterdays ago. I mean, from the 1970s and before, we knew the climate crisis was coming. We have frittered away literally 50 years to try to meet this crisis. We allowed the neoliberals to take over the country, okay, and to do what they wanted. And now we have only 10 years to secure the existence of much of the life on this planet. Maybe all the life on this planet. I hope Courtney is coming back, but I don't know if she is. So I'm going to go on with the comments. Laura says, so why do I keep calling it out on Twitter? Okay, I added Joe and Stephanie Kelton just yesterday, which Joe you retweeted. I'm sorry, I should let it lie. No, you should not let it lie. I'm always happy. I'm always happy when you at me and Stephanie Kelton in the same tweet. I'm always very honored.
Why would she say she should let it lie? I missed something.
I'm not sure why Laura is saying that she ought to let it lie either. I didn't really catch that.
Okay.
Carmen says, I'd help support a Red Beret hospital. Laura Fielding says, there you go, Courtney, wholewashington.org. There was an organizing call today with whole Washington people and Massachusetts care. Oh, that's great. That's amazing. Steve says, first rule of MMT Fight Club, talk about MMT. Second rule, C number 1. Sandy Degg says, I wonder if that's happening in New Jersey. You mean single payer, Sandy? I don't know. Probably Jeff Epstein could tell us something about that. And Ramona Masacci could probably tell us something like that. Something about that. Carmen says, Lisa, not ignoring you, just absorbing Courtney's vigor. Yes, Courtney has
no offense taken, Carmen. None.
Yeah, Courtney has a lot of vigor. And Laura says, Sandy Degg, I will say the work that Scott Denoye is going to be doing to bring the ground game of Red Berets to organizers and assembly members who support the New York Health Act will have an impact. We're going to be getting people fired up and involved. I suppose we shouldn't say we're going to be getting them fired up, okay, and ready to go, right? Okay, because the man probably ruined that for us for all time. But still, fired up and ready to go is a good slogan, objectively speaking. Carmen says, or I should say Courtney's P&V.
Yes, I like that. My grandmother
good.
used to say that all the time.
Go start. Carmen says, I'd be a candy striper volunteer at the Red Berets hospital.
That would be a really cool thing.
Yeah, want it?
Mm-hmm.
Sandy says, are physicians on board with these bills as well? There are physicians that are on board with whole Washington's bill, certainly, and lots of nurses on board with it. Sandy says, my feet froze. And Sandy says, pop goes Courtney. Laura says, actually, we were beginning to make noise in early December, if I recall. Or maybe it was mid, but they had time to react and strategy internally. Laura says, I have to sign out now. Love to you all. Great show. Thank you, Laura. I thought it was too. Carmen says, or how about the Red Beret community clinics?
Oh, that would be amazing.
Yeah, that would be. Yeah, that would be. The kinds of clinics that Bernie Sanders was for so long, but run by Red Berets. That would really be something. And Sandy says, thank you, Laura, and leaves an icon, which I can't read from this interface. Sandy says, entitlements, not a dirty word. Yeah, we really got to take back that word. Really got to take back that word. The liberals, quote unquote, let that word go. The conservatives started attacking it, and the liberals just shut up and would not defend the good word, entitlement. They would not say that an entitlement is a right. Carmen Muniz says, hey, no clicking noise tonight. I kind of missed the Spanish castanets background sound effect. That might have been due to opera.
Yeah, I'm starting to think that too, Joe.
Yeah. But we were using opera early today. We didn't have that early today either.
You know what though? It must be there's a glitch. Something got updated and things aren't working anymore. They're not meshing.
Yeah. Well, I agree with that, but I'm going to try to find out what it is, certainly, because I wasn't aware really that there was something there having to do with the browser. But this switch to Chrome has made it clear, I think, that there is. Carmen says, I was getting my flame flamenco dancing shoes ready. And Courtney says, Carmen Muniz, thank you. So Courtney is in the comments now.
Oh, cool.
Under
Thanks for being here, Courtney.
Curtis. And thank you for coming back in the comments, Courtney. And Lana says, so what about MMT? Most of us who have been JF enthusiasts but believe MMT is important, though we don't like all the sniping, at the state insurance organizers. But it's still important, right? Sure, it's still important because look, keep in mind, Lana, that 70% of the funding for the whole Washington bill is going to be coming from the federal government. The gap for whole Washington itself to fill is only 30% of the total funding. In other words, if you view it as, let's say, total spending of $100 billion, single payer saves $33 billion. What's left is $67 billion. 70% of that $67 billion is covered by the feds. So, of course, it's very important that it's covered by the feds because that part is something that doesn't have to have any sustainability troubles, okay, at all. And there's much less, okay, for the states to fund. But people make much of the fact that when Canada went before Medicare for All, that it was basically province by province, but as it got more and more popular, the federal government extended aid. But I'm not sure what percentage of the total spending in those provinces actually came from the federal government. Even today, I'm not sure what the percentage is that comes from the federal government. I suspect that the 70% that would come from the federal government in the whole Washington plan is probably at least as much as the provinces are getting from the central government in Canada. Okay, I guess I have to look into that and see if that is actually true. But state single payer here, discount how much of the cost would actually be underwritten by the federal government. And Courtney says, thank you, Joe and Lisa. So good to be here with you all. It was great to be here with you, Courtney, also.
Very much.
You were really great. Carmen says, my pleasure, Courtney. Courtney says, I'm down with MMT. I just let my more informed friends lead in that area. Well, we kind of have a team of people we think we can call on with respect to MMT. If you know some MMT, Courtney, we'll be happy to call on you as well. And Lana says, thanks. I want to make sure we're all still on learning mode from all sides. Yes, I think we are in learning mode. We are open to all kinds of arguments. And we're also going to be learning a lot from the New York State situation as we get more deeply into studying that. I think that's going to be very, very interesting. And I think we'll be able to help something happen in New York State as we go forward. Sandy says, thank you, Joe, Bonnie, Lisa, Courtney, and everyone.
Thank you.
And thank you very much for coming. I am through all the comments at this point, and it is about 10:47. So thank you all for coming. And Kay, are you here tonight? I think I'm missing Kay. Courtney says, for sure, the perk of picking a fight with the MMT crowd is that a subject gets completely dissected and we all come out better informed. It's
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. I think it's actually been functional before the Red Berets in some perverse way, as nasty as it was from time to time. It's been functional. And Dolores says, thank you for a great discussion and show. Thank you, Dolores, for hanging around and waiting for us to solve the technical problems, which I have to give kudos to Jeff for that. I don't know if I ever would have gotten around to seeing
switching browsers.
To switching browsers. It's because I've had such a bad time with Chrome, and generally speaking, such a good time in terms of Opera, that it was hard for me to think of the alternative of trying Chrome. Okay, for that reason. But Chrome's been good this evening. Certainly been very good. And Dolores says, Kay was here. She was tired and left at comment reading time. Yes, Dolores, I believe she was. And Lana says, I'll also be happy to give the kindergarten version of MMT. Thank you, Lana. Lana says, good night.
Good night, you guys.
Okay, good night, Lisa. Thank you very much for guest hosting again. It was fun.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me talk with you and Jeff, because I think there's a lot that could come out of those types of discussions, Joe.
Okay, well, I'll invite you next time too.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. And I won't see people around tomorrow or Saturday. I'm going to go hang out with some friends, but I'll see you when I get back.
Okay.
Thanks, Joe.
Okay. Hopefully I'll see you Sunday.
Yes.
Yes.
Hopefully. Maybe not, though. I can't make a promise.
Okay.
But I'll give it a try.
Okay. Good night.
Good night, everybody.
And I'll see you later. And everybody, Carmen, this stream just keeps getting better and better. Have a pleasant night, everyone. Thank you for that, Carmen. We're trying hard to make it really good. And thank you, Courtney. Courtney says, sweet dreams. And Lana says, yes, dissected is right. Okay, good night, everybody.